Welcome! This is Product Camp Conversations, a podcast for curious product people, hosted by Allison and Dave. Each week, they think out loud with a rotating guest about the parts of product that don't fit on a roadmap, community, the human element, and the hallway conversations. Be sure to like and subscribe so you get new episodes every week. Give some extra love providing a review wherever you're listening. It helps other product people find us. Now, let's get into today's show.
Hey, welcome everyone. You're listening to Product Camp Conversations. I'm Allison Herbert, and today we're going to be talking about what is Product Camp Conversations. I'm joined here with Dave. Mathias, how are you?
Hey, Allison, how are you doing today?
Great. So we got together at Product Camp Atlanta last year. We knew each other previously from previous Product Camp experiences and wanted to gather a podcast around what it looks like to be in the Product Camp experience, to navigate attending your first product camp or future product camps. And this podcast got started. So I'd love to really chat with you today about how you got started with product camp and understand where you are today when you say product camp and where do I go? Which ones do I attend? What am I going to talk about when I go?
Yeah, and maybe yes and I'm a big improv person, and yes and is improv where you sort of build on others. And I think one of the things as we were thinking about this podcast, right, a lot of it was the spirit of product camp and how to bring that into a podcast and what does that like. So when I think of the spirit of product camp, it's an unconference. So anyone that's not been there before, it's been around for maybe 20 some years. Years, man, it's in a number of cities around the world where a product camp exists, but it's really a unconference. So what does that mean? That means that it's really less of a, hey, this is how this event is planned, and more as the community that attends is all together contributing and making the product camp what it is. And so whether that's people volunteering their time to help throughout the day, whether it's doing sessions like putting up, because you put up your name for a session and people vote on it. There's different forms like Product Camp Atlanta, like we had last year, right? We got up on stage and they do the 30 seconds before the event where you end up, have then voting afterwards. But then some do voting ahead, but like some do the little stickers where people had submitted, but they do the day of voting. So there's a few different ways but the key is it's not a planned, who knows what you're going to get when you get there, and you sort of like everybody's expected to participate.
Yeah, that's right. And just listening to you talk about it is right. That unconference format may seem strange or different for folks that have done the products or the conference circuit before, depending on your industry or perhaps even where you are in your product journey. You're looking at places like Product Talk or Mind the Product for events. I know some of the larger cities often have product-specific conferences where they're curated agendas. You know who's going to be on the main stage. You're looking for visionaries and thought leaders. And, I think that's a good call out is that the unconference format gives a chance for folks that are doing and practicing the work, a chance to have a shot at the stage with that format you mentioned where, right, it's session voting. So you bring the session, whether it's curated in advance and you're going to prep your session and talk, but ultimately your pitch and or preparation determines whether or not you're going to get through rather than, a smaller committee group of folks selecting, we want to hear from this person. The audience chooses. And I think that's the real power of a product camp event because depending on who's in the room, depending on the climate of what's going on in that particular city and location, that's going to change maybe day to day or even time of year to time of year. If you were saying 20 years ago, what we were talking about in product is very different. It's the same and it's different. And I was pulling up my notes here for the history of product camp because I am a baby in the land of product experience. But so the first one was in Silicon Valley, so Mountain View, California. And then Austin, I think, was shortly after that. And then thinking about the places that we've seen product camps pop up here in those 20 years, places like Boston and Chicago, Dallas, Seattle, Raleigh. So I'm here on the East Coast, so Raleigh is down the road. Atlanta is the next furthest down the road for me. We know you and I met in Atlanta, so the idea of like some of those larger organizations and then newer ones like Phoenix, I think is its first year this year. Yeah, so it's really excited to see that. And I know there's been a couple of other, we drew a blank there, but Minneapolis and Twin Cities is
Yes.
also a piece of that story as well. So really, and St. Louis, I think, is another one that's on the radar for this
Well,
year
there's
as
a lot
well.
of international ones too, right? Like, Berlin and Amsterdam and other areas of the world that put on product camps too. So it really can be a very global. And like you said, there's also been lifespans where some product camps have gone well. Like I've been to Portland, but I don't think Portland's really going on nowadays
Hmm.
like it used to have a regular product camp. And so certain ones will, there's just different life cycles and there's other types of events and whatever sort of, I think you before product camp were going to what you call it a UX camp, which
Yep.
is an unconference. Yeah. So, it just, there's different communities that sort of attract people here in the Twin Cities. We have this nonprofit called Mini Star, and so Mini Star puts on a few different events. One of them is what's called mini bar. Mini, of course, is MINNE for Minnesota, that type of thing. But it's
Okay.
but it's like 1,500 maybe people that will show up for that. It's sort of like the tech event of the year for the Twin Cities in that area where you'll get a lot of folks coming there from all different things, a couple hundred different sessions at on conference and obviously product camp has become is been around in the Twin Cities over 15 years in various forms. And so, but it's also just not the same size and scale too, of course, of like a generalized tech type of event.
Yeah, it's a good call out too. So you've said mini bar a couple of times. I'm like, in the hotel, like with the little small bar.
Yes.
No, no, different. And right, bar or bar camps actually was probably one of the first formats for an unconference. And I know,
Yes.
right, it got its start over in Europe and right, obviously in technology and software, but the idea of coming around a bar to share ideas and not necessarily being the head of, product or right, a product thought leader in the space, you could still put together, hey, I'm working on this. I have this problem to solve. Our team is building this type of work through this type of practice and being able to bring conversation around those ideas, principles, experiences is really where the heart and life beat of product camp has endured.
Actually.
Yeah. So and you mentioned the UX camp piece. So I came to product through UX. I did not do this my whole life. And so that experience of seeing, right, as a career switcher, seeing people of different capacities, experiences, so leaders and practitioners and designers and engineers come together in a room and say, what's got my attention? What's a problem that I'm really interested in working on, or what's a space that I'm really excited and inspired by, and seeing that coalesce into a conversation and that coalesce into a workshop or a session around how do we solve this together. You and I work at different companies. The people on a panel can work at different companies in different experiences in different industries. And yet the problem is the same. We're trying to, right, bring people together around a shared understanding of an idea or how to navigate a space or to build something sustainably so that, right, everyday work doesn't have to be hard, difficult, and trudgy. So it's maybe a new
Or maybe it's a little bit
expression.
better. Maybe what's that saying about your days nowadays, Allison? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, part of it just like say we're people that are in product, especially, I think are extra curious people, right? And so, as part of that curiosity, providing outlets for people to easily suck up, and there's the connection element, which is one thing from just learning from others when you have those connections of those same problems, but also just, of course, there's just different things of like, hey, toolings and now everything's AI, right? Like half the sessions you go to a product camp nowadays seems to be AI related.
Hmm.
I know that there was a product camp I went to. I think it was a product camp in Portland. I went to probably 11, 12 years ago, something like that. That I remember there was like several sessions that were all around like, and there was this big thing of like killing the product roadmap, and it seemed like it was a theme. Like everyone's like, should a roadmap be a thing? So it's it's just sort of what stressors are challenging folks to challenge assumptions at that time and what are on people's minds. Like say, it's interesting too. The other part I think of product camps is how they can vary so much based on the location you're at, right? Because like each of these communities, they have different types of industries. Some can be more, obviously when you think about products, you got digital products, you got service products, you've got physical products, right? And so And so certain areas of the country, definitely a lot more digital products in different metros. Some areas very sort of mixed in what that is. But even that, it's also, I think, the group of organizers that are also sort of their networks and getting the word out. Because like here in the Twin Cities, we have a lot of physical products that are out there, right? We have companies like 3M and Medtronic and, you just think of all those types of physical things that people would get from companies like that, Ecolabs and companies
Hmm.
like that. So
Hmm.
at the same time, it's evolved in how many folks that will attend from those types of locations in large part on like, are you getting it out there and does it just feel like it's digital product management or software product management where it's sort of like, and the people that are naturally going to be attending are going to be more of those. So I think part of it's getting that community. But the nice thing is it can adapt to those locations and it's sort of open for all.
Yeah, that's a great call out. And the climate, the time or the climate, not like geographical. I mean, geographical influences a little bit, but I think about the business that happens in that particular city and industry can really shape the topics, but also who shows up. And then thinking through the evolution. I heard you at the top say, we were trying to kill a roadmap. I'm fascinated by that because I think we're always trying to kill a roadmap, or at least the roadmap's maybe trying to kill us sometimes in our product work. But it's interesting to see how the problems have evolved, how some of the core principles of what we know and understand and know delivers that meaningful problem space exploration and solution have evolved. I've watched, just to give you an idea of one of the first, I think this was the first time we met. The idea of user story mapping is not lost on many folk in the product space, and to watch an entire auditorium participate in a single user story mapping conversation really opened my eyes because I was like, we've all done this in our teams. Maybe we've done it with a set of stakeholders or a specific work group, and maybe there's a dozen people in the room, but there were 200 people in the room, and we built a user story map together in 45 minutes. And so the power of what's possible really starts to connect, right? That was one of the keynote sessions. So it's a bigger conversation, but even just to be in a room with 20 people and talk through, hey, I'm solving this problem too. And how are you doing it versus how am I doing it? Not from a you're right or wrong, but an exploration of that conversation. Leaders can get inspiration because it's less about, right, I'm trying to solve for my team's problem. I'm trying to solve for a problem that a team will have.
Yeah.
And that's another great experience, from a leadership level. The other piece too that I feel doesn't happen as much at unconferences, and you see it more so at a curated conference, is somebody's trying to sell you their consultancy or their product. And cool. That's our job. We have to know about that space. I want those folks to be there. I don't want you to preach to me, and I don't want you to try and sell me at a conference. I'd rather just have a meaningful conversation around the problems I'm trying to solve or the space that I'm navigating. And then if there's an alignment, let's talk about how your product, service, whatever can benefit me, my team, my company, that kind of thing. And that takes the pressure off of needing to, I've been to conferences for the products that I support, and it's right, I'm just being sold and schmoozed the whole time about buying this or buying that. And I'm like, that's not the same thing as solving a problem. Buying it doesn't solve the problem more times than not. It's talking through and understanding how does that meaningful exchange build a sustainable experience or product or things of that nature.
Yeah. Yeah, I think to that point, the other thing I think that comes, and it's different for each of these product camps, I do think, is how many folks think that product camp is for very much the practitioner, or is it also for group product managers and CPOs and other folks, not just product, like you're talking about UX camp, UX folks and some engineers that have sort of more of an inclination of customer engaged engineer. There's now obviously the FDE term, right? The forward deployed engineers, which is becoming more and more of a thing in some companies. And I do think different product camps do a different job of how bringing those folks in. And then the other element of that, I think what's interesting is some cities, and just largely based on what types of folks that are doing the organizing, along with the region itself, is big companies versus startups versus you're talking about consultants or service providers or things like that.
Hmm.
So you do get some interesting different dynamics if you have the opportunity to go to these different product camps. There's the nice thing is, one, they're almost all free or very dirt cheap to attend, and so
Hmm.
that's nice. But it's also, since they're like 1 day events, right? They're not like, hey, 3 day thing. Take an opportunity to go on vacation, go spend a few days
Hmm.
in that, spend a long weekend. One of the days, go do product camp while you're there,
Hmm.
and you'll enjoy that. I mean, like Atlanta, for example, right? They'll have usually a thing the night before. They're always inviting folks that are
Hmm.
out of town folks to come to that night ahead. You'll meet some folks there, and then you'll the next day you'll be at product camp. So in a lot of the cities that have, if you're one of those out of town folks, contact the organizer, see if they have something the night before for something like that.
Yeah, it's about that, and I love that you think through that lens. So, right, we talked through like the industry that's in that particular city, perhaps even the folks that organize or participate in the structure of putting on the camp will influence perhaps the network of people that are there, the representation of the population. But that's another great piece of this is that you get to see other cities. I'm close to Atlanta, but it's not, a day drive. I mean, maybe as a day drive. Atlanta traffic people probably have an opinion on that. But the experience of getting away, getting to see different perspective, getting to see, right, Atlanta's got a great tech scene. They've got a lot of really different companies there and right, a strong tech culture. So you get a lot of CTOs in that room, you get a lot of engineers in that room, you'll get a lot of marketing folk in that room. And so right, the when you can bring those different perspectives, not only different industries, so different industries is one, but then different perspectives, you're really encouraging diverse thinking, exploration, conversation, community. And it's just been a really great chance to see folks that right the Atlanta community also has like a weekly practice it's year round, so it's like kind of getting to come home to your friends and come home to your community and then getting to experience them. And again, you and I both live in different cities in Atlanta, so it is, it's one that we've been to, but also we're familiar with a lot of folks in that community, even though we don't work at their company or right, we don't, live down the road from them. So that's always a great experience. I also am really excited. I'll jump ahead here a little bit, but thinking through like, how do I pick which one to go to? So cool. We're in different cities, different times of years, good for travel or bad for travel. Maybe you go and thaw out because we've been too cold. That can shape your decision, but I'd love to hear from you. What helps you determine which ones you're going to go to? Again, there's lots of
Yeah.
places to go. And right, the logistical part of it, this one's close to me versus this one's across country. But I wonder if there's anything else that factors into why you choose where you go to a product camp.
Yeah, I mean, one is like you say, how easy is it to get there is a big factor. Does it
Hmm.
fit the right time of year where you're like, hey, that'd be a good time of year to go to that location? And then at the same time, I just like trying different locations and taking the opportunity. And this year, for example, there's the like you're talking about Phoenix being a new one. So like, hey, I like would love to support a new product camp that's starting, and so I'm putting that on the calendar there. And then a week later is actually Austin. And so what I'm just doing is I got an Airbnb in Austin, and then I'm just going to Phoenix and go work from the Airbnb. In between, then just go to Austin. No folks there. I've been to their product camp before,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then just take that as an opportunity. So take it as a little bit like a couple weekends and a week of just working there and hanging out with some folks that I know in Austin. It's a great comedy town. Austin is. Catch a couple comedy shows, things like that.
Hmm.
So
Hmm. Hmm.
so making it a little bit of like a working vacation type of thing, where during the week I'm working and just doing that remotely, but also at the same time. And I did that before, like for example, at Vancouver and Portland, but between those two because they're like
Hmm.
both not that
If
far
they're close
relatively.
enough in time that you can kind of go on tour, I think is what we've called it, is we
Yeah,
go on tour for product camp. That's a good call out. And honestly, like Phoenix is right before it gets real hot. Having worked for a group in Phoenix, knowing that the great heat is a big factor in when you schedule those events as well. So that sounds like a really good idea to be thinking about, even if it's not a space that you're familiar with or a city that you've been to before. Does it give you an opportunity to go explore? Does it give you an opportunity to see what's there? I also think another piece that comes to mind with this is choosing what to do when you go. So, right, you've spoken, you've also just been a participant. Which one do you prefer?
guess let's see here. I always like almost every product camp I can go to. Nearly every one I've gone to, I at least put my name up for a session.
Hmm.
And so I certainly enjoy like that part because like one, I think you can try out a lot of interesting new things you might want to think about like, hey, what are people's thoughts on this, and try things out, is it's a great venue for that. So that's nice too. But certainly for me, it's less about sessions and more about just meeting people, having those hallway conversations, and hopefully you like those relationships build over time. So it's actually less about the sessions, whether it's me presenting or going to a session, and more about the conversations that happen in hallways and other things beyond that. So that I
Yeah,
find more interesting.
I would agree with that. I think, it is the experience. This past year was my first time getting on the stage, not my first time presenting or pitching, but it was a different experience to have, right, be on the stage versus just pitching and then, not getting selected or just participating. And I got the equal amount of value from both experiences, but I suspect, like, you shouldn't feel pressured to pitch. You also shouldn't feel pressured to just sit in the seat and listen to other people. Like, if you have something to contribute to a subject area, please. I guarantee you, every person that's ever been on stage wants to see a question or wants to have a
Yeah.
meaningful conversation about their topic. And that's often, I think, at those curated conferences, there's less of a chance to have an exchange. Or you got to wait until afterwards to say, "Oh, good job. I really liked,"
Yeah, people
those types
join
of
a
things.
line
Trying to
afterwards.
catch somebody to talk to them and, chase them down kind of situation where camp definitely feels more like an experience and a conversation. Um, Tying back to our name, but also, right, it's got a different vibe. It's a little less formal. It's a little more personal, and it feels more connective that way. So,
And it's
okay.
also interesting because, like, when we're talking about location that these are at and what those make up and time of year and all these things, another thing that's a factor too is I actually think the spaces some camps choose, or sometimes they evolve into like going different spaces, can make a big difference in what the product camp vibe is, right? And
Hmm.
that's just like anything, space is a factor, right? And so, for example, like when we first met, they was at the NCR headquarters, where
Hmm.
from a
Hmm.
product camp standpoint right
That
there.
big wall of that auditorium, standing and pitching in front of that was so scary. Yeah.
But at the same time, I actually thought, like, from a networking vibes, it actually worked really well, and they had, like, a nice outdoor section too that
Hmm.
worked, like, on the SCAD this most recent year, the where it was at, right? So we had a college art and design in the location down there. It was, like, really cool, like, the auditorium was cool and, like, very, like, sort of pretty cool rooms, but probably not from a networking vibe. Actually struggled, I think, more like just because of where the spaces were and people were trying to get to those, and then so that they get in there,
Hmm.
there wasn't like the same opportunities, I think, from that. But now they afterwards they had a really good happy hour, or like sort of happy hour post
Hmm.
event. A lot of them will do that, and I thought that was a very well set up for networking good too. So I think that's the other thing too, is like where's the location is going to make a difference on that and what that experience is. So you're going to maybe you have to work harder or work less hard for the networking side, depending on what the vibe is at that. So, but that's also an important reason of getting there early too, not just like getting there shortly before it's like everything's kicking off. Because as soon as things kick off, then it's sort of like people are jumping from session to session. You take the opportunity to meet people. I mean, take an opportunity to volunteer. Like all these product camps are looking for volunteers, so help set up during the day, get to meet a few folks, things like that.
Yeah. Location, location, location while you were talking, that came to mind. And you're absolutely right. I've been to several, conferences and right, you think of those big software conferences where you're at like an expo center or convention center situation. Those are built specifically for please go into this room and have a conversation, a huge expo floor, things of that nature. But really trying to curate not a small room, but right, having flexibility for right, this presentation's it's gonna have a lot of attention. So we want everybody in the room together versus I just need 12 or 20 people to get in a room and talk about this. The UX camp that I used to go to in DC, I'm trying to remember the name of the space. I'm not going to, so forgive me if anybody's watching this from that. But I almost think it was like an art, like a business, like an architecture firm. So you had
Yeah.
several meeting rooms, but then you had maybe like enough to hold like 75 people in a space. And then, smaller rooms that would fit 12 to 20 people, depending on maybe 30 in some of those, but really open. So the idea of being able to see that you could go to another room versus I have to go up downstairs to another room or another floor.
Yes.
Again, conferences are different places. Product Fest here in Atlanta, in Richmond, is at one of our entertainment venues, and they have an upstairs and a downstairs and a main stage, much like Product Camp Atlanta. But this space does make a difference. But the building opportunities for community and connection and conversation, those networking pieces
Yeah.
are a big part of that. So that's a good call out.
Yeah.
And then you were talking about the volunteer piece of it. So what does that look like? And maybe you can even share about how right, Minneapolis kind of structures their volunteer structure, or what does that mean? Like, I'm interested, I want to go, sign me up, and bought my ticket, I'm going to go and show up. But what does that volunteer mean? I mean, you're going to put me to
Yeah, I
work
mean,
just to come to a conference?
yeah, I mean, it's usually a few things from a volunteer standpoint. One is there's just the standard logistics things of like, hey, I need somebody to be a room assistant to make sure to monitor time, that there's any tech help that you can help make sure things get set up for the presenter and help them with audience questions, like guiding through that process, things like that. There's that type of thing. There's obviously like the on the other hand, usually like food, whether it's like in
Hmm.
the morning, the breakfast, or the lunch thing, there's usually some volunteers that are needed to assist on that realm. Registration, and I'm talking day of volunteering type things versus like pre-event volunteering. Obviously, pre-event volunteering, like these organizations need sponsors, they need
Hmm.
to get potential speaker awareness, build audience awareness. So there's like people that to help on the marketing standpoint, or people to help on, trying to get sponsors to assist before the event. But like a lot of folks maybe aren't looking for that, but they're like, hey, I'm gonna come to town. I'm gonna get there early. Like Atlanta was like this. I didn't actually sign up officially on this last time for volunteering, but I got there about a half an hour earlier than, and I was like, hey, like, how can I help? And like, just
Hmm.
jumping in and like going around and you get to meet some folks and that kind of thing. So
Yeah, yeah. Again, Atlanta is favorite, and you'll hear about it if you're listening to this conversation. You'll hear Atlanta come up a lot for us. But you can show up, and right, do you need help? Restacking the donuts or the coffees, or organizing chairs, or throwing away pizza boxes at lunch, or right, 5 minutes left in your presentation type of facilitation and awareness. All of those things go into the experience, because often those may donate the space, or they're donating some of the food or pieces to help facilitate the conversation. But it really requires the people that are attending to help do that. Whereas if you go to one of those software conferences at a convention center, they've got staff that are, replacing the towels, or filling the coffee or things of that nature. No, we don't have to make the coffee usually at Atlanta, but there's usually a volunteer or two helping make sure that the space is accessible, and right, there's enough cups and things of that nature. The lunchtime mess is all, or the lunchtime dash is always a fun challenge. And then again, just helping set up a room or tear down a room, or things at the end of the day. Um, that's just a common activity. So that's things anybody can do. If you're in an office space, you've had
yeah,
to, prepare for a meeting, or help somebody set up. So that's something that you don't need to have. I need to know who's organizing volunteers to do, or right, anything that you have to have specific skill sets for. Just showing up and giving back is what the spirit of camp is for.
definitely. Well, and so so obviously you've gone to different things like UX Camp and Atlanta Product Camp. This year you're thinking about going to Phoenix. This will be your first outside of Atlanta Product Camp, right? In
Yep.
this process. Yes.
Yep,
And
yep. So, yeah,
yeah,
that's something that's got my attention. I've also been very, me because we've connected previously, but I'm very intentional about where I spend my learning and development time. So, what experience is going to give me enough value to take back to my team, or take back to my own product role, and then being able to think about. To your point, you've given me some ideas. Like, that's a good time of year to be in Phoenix. So maybe
yeah,
that is a
sure.
little bit of a vacation, or a work from elsewhere opportunity.
Yeah, there's usually like a spring run and a fall run for these different camps. And so you'll notice that, between March and May, there's a number of product camps that are going to be happening. And then usually like end of September to maybe middle of November, you will get a run of product camps too. And so during the summers, not so much. Although there's a couple international ones. Hopefully you're right there. And then of course for the holidays and over the winter side, you don't get as much. I think ones that are coming up, right? So we talked about Phoenix, we talked about Austin. Those are sort of right near each
And
other.
Silicon
There's
Valley, I think, has already got their
Pittsburgh
date up.
is coming up. St. Louis is actually one of the bigger ones. Jeff and the team there do a great job in St. Louis. And so, in fact, so I'm going to try to go back this way. So my last travel trip was, so I was doing some workshops in St. Louis, and then I also was in at Product Camp, and I was speaking at there. I did a couple sessions at that last Product Camp in 2020. So this is like, it was the like second week of March or whatever. So it was like literally before
Oh,
everything
wow.
sort
Right
of was
before
shutting
everything
down.
shut down.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because like one of the sessions that I was presenting at, literally it was like standing room only. In fact, people were sitting like on the floor, like 5 feet in front of me. Like this whole
Hmm.
room was just packed of folks like for my session, and it was like, oh, like I was like, okay, like didn't get it, but then of course like just traveling, that was a fun experience. But the location for this one is I think at the same location it was before, so it's at one of the universities in St. Louis. So I'm looking at, I put a session in for submission and likely going to be able to make that trip and go down there. It's a nice quick trip from the Twin Cities.
Yeah. So I think that's a good call out here is as we continue to talk through these, I'd love for us, right, our schedules aside, like being able to come back to this conversation post camp or in preparation for a particular event venue and talking through like what has my attention about who's going to be at this session or what did I see in here that was really exciting. And I think that's going to help not only us with our podcast, but also just conversating for folks that may not be thinking about product camps as an opportunity to build your own personal experience, but also networking experience, your learning and leadership experience in the product space.
Yeah, and the good news is like even though some places may not have product camp, they have some kind of a community. You do
Hmm.
see more and more. It is nice to see that it's really been sort of getting more lively in a lot of communities, whether it's meetup groups or other types of things. And if there isn't one in your area, and assuming that it's your area is decent enough size population wise, it's like, hey, there's an opportunity for you to start something up in your location and see if people are interested. I know there's a couple different meetup groups here. Well, there were meetup groups. They've actually now moved on to other different platforms, but that have, just like the one's a coffee, like in the morning,
Hmm.
once a month, and one's like a happy hour type version of that. So a certain day in the month, and where people come together in this sort of shared realm. Because I do feel like one of the things that product folks in general is I think it's a stressful type of role that oftentimes people face burnout, and there's a lot of uh, sort of confusion and misalignment that oftentimes people are facing in their organizations. There's a lot of
Hmm.
transformation that you're involved with that, and so needless to say, like having a group of others that you can, one, maybe a little bit of a therapy session for folks, right? Like discuss it,
Hmm.
but also at the same time learning from others and how folks have handled different situations and just giving another perspective, that because obviously in the heat of the moment, anytime you're gonna have natural biases that are blurring your lens a little bit,
Hmm.
what's maybe the best path forward. So yeah, so take the opportunity to find that community for you, because that's really why we're calling this product camp conversations. It's not about just like, hey, going to product camps and we're going to spend every episode talking about product camps, but it's about the spirit of product camp, right? And which is really, when I think about the spirit of product camp, I think of it as a community of folks that are sort of accepting and that are they're always learning in this space, and that just a friendly group to connect with. And so trying to create that in your life, and that this podcast is sort of going to be, sometimes it's just me that are going to riff, right, and something like we do, but also at the same time bring somebody else in that we might have met at a product camp or somewhere else that we think, hey, let's go riff on something that person maybe can bring to our audience.
Yeah, that's a good call out. And I appreciate your nod to product therapy, but right, our work can be siloed sometimes. It can be siloed within our team. It can be siloed within our organization, depending on right how big your product team is or how product aware your organization is. And right, problem exploration is not a solo endeavor. Yes, it can be done, but it won't be as effective and it won't be sustainable if you are the only person thinking about the problem. You need a room full of folks. You need diverse perspectives to really explore it fully, remove those biases, like you said. And right, sometimes it's good just to say out loud, man, you understand what it's like to navigate a stakeholder engagement and say, I've got this business unit and this business unit and this audience, vying for my attention and my development time, and how can I balance those things and keep everybody, I don't know if it's keep everybody happy, but keep everybody from, full chaos ensuing and creating more work and pain for my teams.
Glass half
I
full
think
or glass half empty, depending which way you're
that's
looking at
right.
things.
That's right. That's right. And right, the winds change depending on, again, your industry, depending on, how your team is structured and set up. None of us saw AI. I don't know that we didn't see AI coming, but where we sit today with AI is very different than where we were sitting, just in November when you and I were on stage. And then I think of like when we first started building our talk 6 months prior, like, very different. Like we were just talking about vibe coding and here we are now right. The vibe coding is kind of like, it's not step one, but it's like, it's now a constant, or it's a piece that's factored into any decision. I've read something this morning that, right, the whole design process is being questioned at this point because the idea to, right, discover, iterate, and then test is just, you can just do that. Um,
Yes. I think there's a lot of convergence that's happening in a lot of roles, and this I don't think is unique to product. I think when
mm-mm.
you get to the AI front, and not to dive too much into this one, but I think things are shifting, and how do you do it in a way that's a healthy shift? Obviously, whichever role, like you can everyone's like, hey, like AI can do everything. Well, no, but like at the same time, it can do a lot, and it keeps on doing more. How the key is still like, what is a goal of product in your organization, like, or product teams, right? Product teams are, whether it's the engineering side, the product managers, the designers, searchers, etc. It's like, okay, we're trying to understand what problems are out there, right, from customers, what type of alignment that is towards the strategy of the business and what those look like, and the capabilities of the business, and sort of solving for those market needs, right? And so when you think about things, those things all still apply. It's just a matter of, how that, the discovery end might change and adapt, and then certainly the delivery end is changing and adapting fairly quickly with that. So
Yeah, I think that's a great call out too. It's not so much about the solution space as it is the exploration space and building community and practice around exploring that you really get out of camp. And those conversations and connections that you make from camp help extend that outside of just that 1 day event. You
yeah.
can then say, always, right? I say this now. I always have Dave that I can go back to and say, Dave, I feel like this AI is my enemy, but it really should be my friend. Help me
Yes.
understand. And you talk me off the ledge. And so just to thinking through where we've explored conversation today, we talked through the history of product camp. We talked through about our own product camp experiences and what we've gotten or gained valuable insights from. If you were going to put this in a neat little package to kind of help somebody understand what we're capturing in this session, it sounds like, right, you need to just be considering camps if you're not already aware of them, right? They can be close to you and your local area or perhaps even in your expertise area. So I'm really interested in a specific type of industry or things of that nature. Certain camps are going to lean or skew towards that subject area. It's volunteer based. So, right, usually low or no cost to attend, but you may be put to work or asked to volunteer your time. And that's part of the experience itself. It also sounds like, it's not just about attending and it's not just about going to a new place and experiencing new things, but it's really about stretching yourself. So is stretching yourself, meeting 3 new people that you can have a conversation with, or meeting somebody that has a similar topic and you can pitch a session with. And so I don't know if there's anything else that comes to mind if you're thinking about what you would say to someone if they're looking at a product camp in 2026. What would you give them as advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think too, what you're saying is, one is just like, go find something that's can work for your schedule and go attend. And like,
Mhm.
but don't just attend as a mindset of like I'm attending as somebody that's observing, but like how can I really get involved and make this just like any learning experience you can. If you're are you going to actively engage in that learning experience and get the most value out of it, or are you going to more sit back and passively try to sort of take it in, but we know you'll get something out of it, but then it won't be as much. To me, I think the more important thing for a lot of folks nowadays, and they're as we're seeing things rapidly changing, is like the world's changing quickly. We know that's the case. It's not going to slow down. It's only going to get more like that. And so building those personal connections and relationships and that sense of community, and we get very comfortable oftentimes, especially like you might be at the same organization 10 years, 15 years, et cetera, and you have a really good network of folks there, which is great. Like that's awesome too,
Mhm.
but also at the same time, making sure to take that opportunity to broaden that and stretch yourself and keep on growing. So finding one that may like maybe you're looking for something, you're like, hey, I'm gonna go find the one that's international and go try to do
Oof.
international trip. I'm thinking of doing that one or two times maybe this year if I can do it. I've been looking at a couple to see if they'll drop at the same time that they did last year when they announced their official 26 date. A couple of them have dates out there. They're like in Europe that are summer time. So I'm like,
Okay.
yeah. So who knows?
Okay. I like that. I
Yeah.
like the call to action there. Stretch yourself. So, right, I need to learn or I need to see this problem from a different perspective. A product camp is a great way to do that. And the folks that you'll meet there will often carry you further than just that one day experience. So, right, you'll make a meaningful connection around, right, a subject matter or a support system, a leadership mentor, things of that nature.
Cool. Well, with that being said, it's getting a little bit, well, actually tomorrow it's getting warmer here. So it's still again, today's actually a chill day, but hey, spring is coming. That means product camps are coming.
Mhm.
So hopefully things are brightening up for everyone, at least in the United States side of things. And with that, I hope you have a good week ahead, Allison.
All right, Dave, thanks so much for your time, and I look forward to hearing more from you on the next product camp conversations.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Product Camp Conversations. If something here sparked an idea or a potential guest, or you want to push back on something, we'd love to hear from you. Reach us at productcampconversations@gmail.com. And if you know a product person who'd get something out of this, send it their way. Have a great day wherever you are. We'll catch you next time on PCC.
Everybody talk PCC. Posters on the wall, big dreams on the screen. Roadmap, reads in between. Stories from the meetup, lessons on the fly. Launches that sword, some just scrape by. You're down with PCC, yeah, you know me. You're down with PCC, yeah, you know me. You're down with Product MC, every team. Everybody talk PCC.